Less than 2 decades ago, a remote island in the Southern Ocean was quietly slipping into one of the most disturbing ecological disasters in modern history. The cause? Thousands of rats left to roam freely amongst penguins on a small windswept island. At first, few noticed. The changes were subtle. A missing chick here, a bit of trampled grass there. But what followed was a devastating chain of events that shocked the global scientific community. Macquarie Island, located about 1,500 kilometers southeast of Tasmania, was once a sanctuary of untouched biodiversity. Just 34 kilometers long, the island seemed unremarkable at a glance, all cliffs and coastline with nothing but the wild Southern Ocean to keep it company. But beyond the surf and sea spray, Macquarie Island held something rare, an ecosystem that had evolved in near-perfect isolation. Elephant seals lounged on its shores and royal penguins squawked in enormous colonies. Inland, towering mega-herbs like the Macquarie Island cabbage stood tall amongst thick tussock grass, forming a lush green paradise untouched by time. The native wildlife had adapted over millennia without ever needing to fear predators. Birds like petrels had evolved to spend their days soaring over open water, returning only at night to nest in burrows, hidden from view and danger. It was a clever strategy that had served them well, until the first humans arrived. In the early 1800s, seal hunters came ashore, setting up temporary camps, but they brought with them stowaways, rats and mice. No one realized it then, but these tiny invaders would spark one of the most complex and most destructive environmental stories ever recorded. With no predators to keep them in check and a buffet of bird eggs, chicks, and plants to feast on, the rodents flourished. The petrels were among the first to suffer. Their strategy of nesting underground backfired spectacularly. Rats raided their burrows, devouring eggs, killing chicks, and even attacking adult birds. The mice, meanwhile, turned their attention to insects, eating larvae, beetles, spiders, and moths. And with each bite, they unraveled the delicate threads of an ecosystem that had taken thousands of years to build. The sealers, for their part, began to notice their own supplies being ransacked. Rats and mice were everywhere. Someone had the idea, perhaps intentionally, perhaps not, to introduce cats to the island, hoping that they would control the rodent population. And this was a classic example of a well-meaning solution gone horribly wrong. The cats didn't just hunt rats, of course. On an island where birds had no natural fear of predators, the cats found easy prey. They hunted relentlessly, killing not just for food but seemingly for sport. An estimated 60,000 seabirds were killed every year, 160 a day. Species like the Macquarie Island rail and the colorful parakeet vanished forever, and more than 10 bird species went extinct, some before scientists could even study them. And the rats? They kept multiplying. Then came another mistake. In 1878, rabbits were released on the island. The idea was to provide shipwrecked sailors with a potential food source. But on a predator-free island full of lush vegetation, the rabbits exploded in number. By 1968, there were over 100,000 rabbits. And they didn't just nibble plants, they consumed entire hillsides, roots and all. The soil, now bare and destabilized, began to collapse. In 2006, the consequences came crashing down, literally. A massive landslide in Lusitania Bay, triggered by years of vegetation loss, buried a vital king penguin colony. Hundreds of birds were lost. It was a moment that made headlines and marked the point of no return. Scientists visiting Macquarie Island in those years described it as a wasteland. The once vibrant landscape looked like a battlefield. The rabbits had eaten 40% of all vegetation. And without plants, soil erosion accelerated. Petrel burrows collapsed. Penguins lost nesting cover. Albatross chicks perched dangerously on unprotected cliffs. And predators like skuas now had an open buffet. By the mid-2000s, the situation was dire. Rats were estimated at 36,000. Mice topped 100,000 and rabbits over 300,000. Some of the island's rarest plants only survived inside fenced plots. 2 orchid species found nowhere else on Earth needed constant protection to avoid extinction. It was more than just a crisis, it was a textbook case of what scientists call a trophic cascade, a domino effect in which disruption of one level of the food web causes massive, unpredictable consequences on every other level. And the initial solution, introducing cats to kill rats, had backfired even further. Later, removing the cats caused the rabbit population to explode. Every step forward brought another unexpected collapse. By 2007, the island was considered an ecological basket case. The Australian and Tasmanian governments decided to act. The only hope was full eradication. Every rat, every rabbit, every mouse had to go. The plan would cost over $24 million and take nearly a decade. It would become the most ambitious pest eradication project in history. The effort began with a biological assault, introducing a lethal rabbit virus, calicivirus, via infected carrots. And it worked. Rabbit numbers crashed almost overnight. Next came helicopters dropping over 300 tons of bright green poison pellets across the island. Timing was critical, they had to act in winter when most seabirds were off the land to avoid collateral damage. Thousands of poisoned animal carcasses were later collected by hand to protect scavengers. But unfortunately, poison wasn't enough. Even one surviving rabbit or rat could restart the disaster. So they brought in elite reinforcements, 12 specially trained dogs, including spaniels, terriers, and labradors. These weren't ordinary pets. They were conservation specialists, able to sniff out a single rat dropping from 100 meters away. The dogs and their handlers endured brutal conditions, icy rain, mud, cliffs, and endless miles of grass. And one Labrador, Wags, working with her handler Melissa H. Hot-Ton, became a hero. In late 2011, Wags found the last surviving family of rabbits, a female and her kits, hidden deep in a remote corner of the island. It was proof that the strategy worked and a chilling reminder of how close they were to failure. For 2 more years, the team scoured every inch of Macquarie Island. In 2013, with no sign of pests, 3 more detection dogs were added for good measure. Finally, on April 8, 2014, the island was officially declared pest-free for the first time in more than 200 years. But the story didn't end there. The question now was, could nature heal itself? At first, expectations were low. Scientists warned that it could take 30 to 50 years for any real recovery. But Macquarie Island surprised them all. The first signs of life came from the soil. Plants that had survived only inside fence plots began sprouting across the landscape, and seeds long buried suddenly germinated. Melissa H. Hot-Ton, who had led the dog team, chose to stay on the island as a researcher. And what she saw was breathtaking. Tussock grass began growing taller than a person, and the mega herbs returned. Areas that had been barren wastelands were now green and lush, and the animals came back too. Petrels began nesting again. White-headed petrel numbers soared. Grey and blue petrels, which had vanished entirely from the main island, returned. And as the birds returned, so did the ecosystem. Their guano enriched the soil, helping plants grow, and the plants provided shelter, attracting even more birds. The island entered a cycle of regeneration. One of the most astonishing turnarounds was the comeback of rare plants. The endangered orchids, once fenced off, now appeared across the island. Hupatitia australia, a rare herb with just a handful of surviving specimens, began spreading into new areas. Today, scientists estimate that Macquarie Island is home to more native wildlife than at any point in the last 150 years. Some bird populations are growing at rates of 10% per year, nearly unheard of in conservation. Satellite images show vast areas of green where once there was only barren earth. But the lesson hasn't been forgotten. Macquarie Island is now under strict biosecurity. Every visitor, every crate, every backpack is checked. Dogs sniff cargo. Equipment is scrubbed. Every jacket pocket is vacuumed, because scientists know what's at stake. Another invasion, even a single rodent, could restart the disaster. Macquarie Island's story is a warning, a cautionary tale about how even small actions can unleash massive ecological consequences. But it is also a story of resilience, of how a place can come back from the edge with science, determination, and time. In a world increasingly shaped by human interference, Macquarie Island stands as proof that while we can cause immense damage, we can also help undo it. Recovery is not always quick or easy, but it is possible. One island, one mistake, and a lesson for the planet. Share this story, because sometimes the most powerful change begins with remembering what went wrong and fighting to make it right. Now, if you've been nodding along, maybe hit the subscribe button and hang out for the next video too. We go deep into topics like this, unexpected, underreported, and strangely unforgettable.